Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dr.Podcast. And our guest is a very special guest because actually she's also the co-host for Dr.Podcast, Dr. Liz Lozano. Hello, and thank you for
Hi.
being our guest today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
I'm excited too, actually. So are you ready to tap into your journey?
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. So how about you tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to embark on the journey of earning a doctorate degree in your discipline in specific?
Yeah, so I graduated with my PhD in social and personality psychology from UIUC, and this was 2021. And I was doing a lot of research on assisted reproduction and donor conception, and also attachment, so parent-child relationships. And then from that point, I became an assistant professor at Cal North State, and since then I've been teaching a variety of courses, doing research still on donor conception, and also now I'm an entrepreneur. So it's called Conception Connection, and I'm trying to bridge the gap between entrepreneurship and actually applied psychology with basic science that I conduct.
That's amazing. I'm always intrigued by scholars who try to always bridge the gap between entrepreneurship and scholarly activities in academia, because there's always that sort of disconnection, right?
Definitely. Yeah. And that's the thing. We're doing so much research, so we need a way to actually apply it, right? And help people in society. So
Definitely. Which brings me to the second point. I mean, you have an amazing journey, apparently, and any journey that is worth it is filled with obstacles, right? So There was this quote that Winston Churchill once said, which is, "Success is not final, failure is not fatal, it is the courage to continue that counts." So what were your biggest obstacles that you faced during your PhD journey, and what strategies helped you overcome them?
yeah, there were so many obstacles, I feel like, from day one, but I would say the biggest one was working alongside someone who had more of a tough love approach to mentorship and supervising me. So I think that, along with some interpersonal difficulties, kind of strained the mentee-mentor relationship. And without saying too much, the person basically threatened to kick me out of the program. So that was really trying. It was a very difficult time for me. And I wanted to work tirelessly, right, to get into a PhD program. So that was a big obstacle that I had to face. And for me, I had to advocate on my behalf, right, to join another lab, to do research that I was really passionate about. So I think for me, it was really just trying to stay resilient despite the trying times and, stay focused on what my goal eventually was to pursue my PhD and to finish.
So you did not just give up, right?
No,
it's
definitely
so easy.
not. Oh yeah. I think there were so many times where I just wanted to throw the towel in, but I just knew that I belonged in academia and this was something that I wanted to do long term.
Yeah. And it's always possible that the mentor-mentee relationship might not be the best. Might be one of the major challenges, because sometimes we're not lucky enough to choose our mentors, right?
Yeah. And I think it's just adapting, right, your style to what that student needs. So now when, mentoring, I try to get a sense of what do you need, right, and try to provide, that to that student.
And
trying to foster a good supportive environment.
Definitely. And that's mentorship best practices, sort of, right?
Yeah. And we're not perfect. We're human beings, so I always keep that in mind as well, is that we're human beings. So.
Of course. And it's a learning curve always. I mean, even when it comes to mentorship, we will always learn new techniques, new tools that will help us become better mentors, more accepting and graceful mentors, mentors that accommodate their mentees' needs, like you said.
Exactly. There's no one size fits all approach to mentorship.
Exactly. It's exactly like food, like all other things.
Yeah.
It's not one diet that fits all, one approach that fits all. Everyone has their own, and especially that you're a psychology expert. You know it best.
Yes, that's so true, though.
So, how about challenges in research? And if you had a little bit of teaching, how did you manage those challenges, especially that we all have our personal lives as well, right? How can we juggle? How did you juggle all these things together?
It was not easy. I was, managing completing various projects, on donor conception, other things that I was working on. I was teaching full time as a lecturer and also writing and defending my dissertation. And I was on the job market. So it was a lot all at once. I feel like for me, it was always finding an outlet, being with friends, people that would motivate me and inspire me, going to the gym, taking care of myself. So I think that for me, I always try to make sure, right, that I can like put myself first, and fill my own cup up. I feel like that's what helps me then give to others. So I think it was just trying to find time, for myself to do that, to engage in self-care, because that's so important when pursuing a PhD. You have to take care of yourself first and foremost, so that way you can then give your best effort.
100%. Like you said, you have to be your own advocate. You have to advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
And what do you think of imposter syndrome?
Oh, imposter syndrome. I definitely have experienced that. I mean, I was first generation, so neither of my parents had attended college. So it was a big, deal for me to even be in a college setting, let alone higher ed, and getting into a PhD program, trying to complete that. So I think that the tip I always give to students is saying, first of all, you belong. I feel like that gets at the, the basis of imposter syndrome. People feel like they don't belong, and you do. If you're accepted to a program, right, you do belong, and you just have to keep fighting for it. If it's something you're passionate about, something you want to do, you're going to find a way, right, to get through and to make it happen. So just know that you're worthy and you have value.
Exactly. And I believe that's an amazing advice. But if I asked you for, let's say, another advice or set of tools or strategies for us to regulate our self-doubts.
Oh, yeah. So I feel like that's a lot of, so it's like the negative triad that people have in terms of their cognitions. So I think it's similar to like CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. So as soon as you recognize that you're, engaging in those negative thought patterns, you have to kind of just stop it at that point. Right. So it's reframing it and not engaging in catastrophizing. So you don't want to assume the worst possible thing will happen, because chances are, right, we stress out and we get so anxious about things that we actually have no control over and things that probably never will even happen. Right. So I think trying to reframe it, bring it back to, okay, this is reality, right? This is what is likely going to happen. So how can I best prepare? What's within my realm of control that I can actually work on?
I love it. So think positive and manifest success. Manifest all the wonderful things that will happen.
Exactly.
If I kept going, right? If I kept moving.
Yeah. And I think it's important, though, with that, to take a break. I feel like so much of this, it goes back to your last question of the importance of rest. I think so much in a PhD, you're doing all these things. You have all the different, balls in different baskets, but you have to basically, right, give time to yourself to replenish yourself, right, to engage in self-care, or else you're going to be burnt out over the long run.
So true. And unfortunately, when it comes to breaks, sometimes I feel that PhD students or people that are always eager to accomplish and overachievers, they feel guilty. They feel, oh, there's no time for a break. And if I took a break, that's waste of time. But I think we need to shift that mindset, right? We need to think differently about break. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I used to definitely, be part of that mindset. I would never want to take a break. I would be constantly go, go, go. But then I realized I was getting sick and I just was not at my best. I was going through so many mental health challenges. So for me, like, I needed to take some time for myself. I still had the goal in mind. I was still working towards it, but I realized I didn't have to run, to finish that, cross the finish line. I could still be walking pretty fast, but I didn't have to sprint to get there.
Exactly. Because burning out or getting burnt out would be so easy, right?
Oh,
and
definitely.
I think only then we will not be able to achieve what we really wanted, and it will be a mess eventually.
Yeah, definitely. That's why I think it's important to just realize, right? Like, you're working towards a goal, and even incremental steps towards that, that's progress. So
true. And that is why I believe that you're an amazing mentor, which brings us back again to mentorship. there was this very nice quote which said, "A mentor is someone who sees more talent and ability within you than you see in yourself and helps bring it out of you." So how about you share with us a pivotal interaction with a mentor or a colleague that shaped your perspective on research or academia in general?
Yeah, I've been fortunate to have so many great mentors throughout my academic journey. The first one was, this person that I worked with all throughout undergrad, my first master's degree, and she was just so supportive. Every single time I felt the imposter syndrome or I was struggling with something, she'd be like, keep at it. You belong, you can do this. So I feel like that really helped, me. She was like my personal cheerleader to help guide me and scaffold me. So that was instrumental in helping pave the way forward, and getting to where I am today. And then there was also this other person that I had met in 2019, a friend. And I feel like this person just really helped me understand my full potential. He saw what other people couldn't see and maybe what I didn't really see in myself until pretty recently. So I think that I just learned the importance of balance, of pursuing things that I love and being around the people that I love while doing it.
That's amazing. And you tapped into a very important point, which is that sometimes we are unaware of the gifts that we have within. We're unaware of the talents, right, that we have, or the things that make us unique. And it takes another person to sort of bring it out, or to sort of raise our awareness towards it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's definitely it. It's consciousness. I think it's like holding up the mirror so that way people can see, right, what they're capable of, and recognizing that. So important.
That's really great. So I bet that part of this mentorship journey is what made you fall in love more and more with psychology, right? So this takes me to another question, which is, if someone was contemplating a PhD in your area of expertise, what would you tell them?
Oh, yeah. And this has actually happened. So I would say you have to really want it, and the more important thing is, why do you want it? So knowing that reason, because are you getting the degree for your family, or is it to prove, right, that you're worthy and that you can accomplish it? So those are more extrinsic reasons, right, outside of yourself. So the important thing is to really be interested, right, and passionate about the subject yourself, right? So that's intrinsic and comes within. So with that being said, there has to be that motivation and a passion, right, for doing research, teaching, or both. And if there isn't, I would always say your time is spent better elsewhere, right? There's other things you can do. A PhD will even afford you all these other opportunities, right? You don't have to necessarily go into research, but yeah, it's being very passionate about what you do. That's so important.
Extremely important, especially that PhD is not that easy of a journey.
Yes, definitely not. Lots of obstacles. What is that meme where it's all going in all different directions? It's what I thought the journey would look like, and it's just a straight, narrow path. And then it's what it actually is, and it's all the different bumps. Yeah.
That is so true. So true. That is why it's either that you're passionate and you have the patience to sort of try to make it a little bit of a straight line from those bumps.
Exactly.
Or you will keep going round and round, and it's very challenging, very challenging. Yeah. And sometimes people, especially if they don't have the passion, feel, okay, what did I do? I mean, why did I do this?
Right. So you don't want to end up being a hamster on a hamster wheel, just spinning around endlessly, it's finding some direction, and with that comes a lot of introspection. I mean, I know for me, I had to engage in that, take some time to journal, to self-reflect, about what is important. What do I want to do? How do I see this research going forward? Things like that.
That's great. So can you elaborate more on the journaling part? Because not necessarily that a lot of people do it, but I know that there are several that adopt that technique, and it's really helpful. They said that it's really helpful.
It is. For me, I do it first thing in the morning. I'm more of a morning person. Like my mind is fresh at that point. So after I've gone to the gym, right, I'm having my first cup of coffee in the morning. I just like sit down with like my journal and just like jot ideas, right? It could be about research. It could be about entrepreneurship and like my company ideas for like how to move that forward. So yeah, just giving myself, some devoted time where there's no interruptions, putting my phone on do not disturb, just like setting aside that time religiously is so important, and just making time for yourself every day.
You mentioned something very important, which is putting your cell phone aside and putting it on do not disturb,
Yeah,
because it's a huge source of distraction. I mean,
it
when I
is.
think about it, yeah, luckily at some point in my life there weren't smartphones, and the distraction was much less, and I could focus on so many things, on reading, on reflecting. But now with the technology, I mean, it's
Yeah.
making it much harder, right?
It is, yeah. And then whenever there's a break, you're like, oh, let me just scroll through my phone, right? And then people waste time, they're procrastinating. So there's a lot of, it's good that we have the internet, but I mean, it can definitely backfire, especially when doing a PhD, if you don't, make good use of your time effectively.
Definitely. It's a double-edged weapon for sure. I mean, of course, with all the AI tools that are there and the research tools, PhD students nowadays have much more leverage compared to, let's say, for instance, I obtained my PhD in 2014. So it was a little bit more difficult, right,
Yeah,
compared to now. And of course, if we compare it to those who obtained their PhD in the 90s,
right?
yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. So it is.
So,
It's
so
instrumental. It's so good. But I think that we always have to be aware, right? Of like, okay, how much time am I allotting to this? Is it serving me? Is my time better spent doing something else more constructive?
definitely. And since we brought in AI and ChatGPT, do you have any reflections on that for
Yeah.
prospective PhD students? Or
I think that it's great, as a tool to use. Like, so for instance, like English as a second language users, learners, I feel like that's so important though, to like have that as, a tool and as a resource. And then also with imposter syndrome, right? Feeling the need of like, oh, I don't feel like I'm a great writer. So using that to help craft your statements or to like help rephrase things, I think is beneficial. But I think it's so important to have your novel ideas, right? The whole creative enterprise of pursuing a PhD is not, I would argue, not related to AI. That's outside of it. It's just like writing down, journaling, right? AI can't do that, right? AI will come up with some great ideas, but I would say that the greatest ideas are the ones that you're going to come up with.
exactly, you have to give your personal touch, your human touch, or
Yeah,
else, what's the point of our brain being there
right.
with all the
Exactly.
analytical skills and everything, that our brain is capable of doing. I mean,
Yeah,
I know that, for instance, the father of the modern AI said that at some point AI, or maybe that AI is more intelligent now than humans, but I think we are the ones who are capable of reversing that somehow. Because it's
yeah,
either that we use our brain,
exactly.
or it will result in the dystrophy.
Yeah. Well, and I would say too, with AI, we're talking a lot about the challenges, right, that people face along the journey. AI can't help with that, right? I mean, it can probably give you some skills and, techniques, but it's not going to do the work for you, right? So it can only come so far, right? Like we're human beings and we have to keep like pushing through, fighting through, right? But it's very different than AI.
Oh, definitely. Great. Now let's speak a little bit about collaborations.
Yeah.
So, how significant do you think were collaborations in your research, and in what ways did it influence your findings, your journey in general?
Yeah, I was fortunate to have a lot of, collaboration opportunities during grad school. And I feel like that's what I attribute most to my success. So while I was in grad school working with my old advisor, I was able to do research that I was deeply passionate about on donor conception. And to this day, I'm deeply appreciative of the mentorship that, my old advisor, Chris Fraley, provided. he basically allowed me to like carve out an area of research that had been like underexplored and kind of just make it my own. And I approach mentorship, right, and collaboration the same way with my students now. So I'm asking them like what they're looking to achieve, and I provide an environment, right, where they can be independent and like learn on their own. But at the same time, right, I'm there to kind of like help guide and scaffold, right, as needed. So I feel like that really helped, though, pave the way to how I mentor, how I actually engage in collaboration now. So
That's really great. I mean, sometimes, not necessarily PhD students only, but even the PIs tend to refrain from collaborating with others because they feel so possessive of their ideas, and they feel, you know what? No, sharing is not caring when it comes to research.
right, right. And which I understand, right? Like people take a lot of ownership over their ideas because they're so excited about them, right? But the best work that I've done and that I've seen others do is like when they're working with a team, right? No one's perfect. We all have different skill sets. So that allows people, right, to incorporate, right, what they do best. And then you can actually have a better product that way at the end. So I think
Exactly.
it's advantageous.
It is. Teamwork in general is always, it always results in great things
It
versus if
does.
I'm working, if
Yeah.
I'm working individually.
Right. And I think it's
Yeah,
the dynamics as well, right? It's speaking up for yourself, right? Trying to create a positive environment where everyone can contribute, right? You don't want it to just be one person contributing. You want it to be like an equal exchange, which is
exactly.
not always easy, but possible.
Of course, and we can see that on in our profession, being professors, and when we teach students and we give them group assignments, for instance, you always see
Oh, yeah.
how not necessarily that everyone is equally contributing, but I do believe that working within a team and collaborating does give us a lot of skills that we wouldn't be able to acquire if we're working alone, right?
Definitely. Yep. It allows people to like really understand, right, other people as well and how to work with them, which is instrumental in like whatever field you end up going in.
Definitely. Okay, so reflecting on your PhD journey, what accomplishment stands out as your greatest source of pride?
There were so many things, that I was like, when papers would come out and I would like scream for joy and jump for joy. But I would say it was probably defending my dissertation, probably because in 2 days' time, so as soon as I had defended, I was about to move to California. So I remember I was so sleep deprived and I had to pack up all of my belongings in 2 days to move out to California. It was the most like hectic week ever, but I still remember every single detail like it was yesterday, down to even the celebratory cake that I purchased for myself in advance. So it said Dr. Lozano on it. And now I look back and I'm so happy I did that because it forced me. I was like, there's no failure is not an option. I'm going to be Dr. Lozano today. So I need to basically pass and give it my all. But yeah, I just remember everything about that day. It was great.
I love how you just mentioned self-celebration, patting
Yeah.
yourself on the back, giving yourself the push, because sometimes we need it from within. We need our inner source of motivation, being our own cheerleaders, right?
Yeah. Yep. Because it's sometimes, right, it's hard to find good mentors. That's what happens sometimes in academia. It's not the easiest thing. But if you find, right, somebody, that's like great to like have them help, be your cheerleader. But at the same time, you have to be your own, right? So giving yourself a pat on the back and just knowing that you're doing everything you can, right, to move forward. So yeah, it's
So
very
true,
important.
so true. And you mentioned two things. You mentioned the defense and you mentioned publications.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm a PhD student, right? And I really need some guidance, some push when it comes to publications because I feel I'm giving up. I feel that I'm not being able to put papers together. I feel that it's never ending.
Right.
So let's start with the publications. What would be some of your advice for, achieving that? And publishing and not giving up when it comes to publication?
I would say, worry more about the quality, right, than the quantity. I think it's so easy to engage in social comparison, especially if you're in like a very competitive, like R1 environment. I felt like I did the same thing throughout my journey. But for me, I think it was important to kind of think, okay, I want to make sure that I do the best science possible. And with that, right, it might take me longer, right, to do that. I want to make sure that it's free from errors, right? I want to actually make sure that I can think about the theoretical, right, background behind this, any kind of connections to future research, future directions. So yeah, I would say like worry more about the quality of the research opposed to like how many papers, right, you're going to publish.
And what about the feedback? Like the fear of getting feedback, when the paper comes back all red from your PI, and then also the reviewers, right?
Exactly. It's actually funny. It's funny. I just was, revising someone's paper the other day, one of my undergrads, and I saw that there was so much red, and I was like, oh, I'm like my old advisors. I've become them. But yeah, I would say don't be discouraged by that, right? It's not a finished product. Even when you submit something and you think that it's the last version, it's never the last version. So many times I would title it final, and then I realized very quickly, this is not the final draft. You're always making improvement. So yeah, don't see it as like a personal attack or, someone who doesn't think that you're capable, right? They're just trying to improve the work, right? So exactly. I kind of wish I could go back now with what I know.
Yeah, I think part of maturity is the ability to accept feedback in a positive and constructive way, and take what really benefits you and makes us a better version of ourselves and makes our work a better version as well, right?
Exactly. Even going to like with reviewer 2, right? There's always the joke, oh, reviewer 2 thinks that it's a pile of trash. It's so bad. It's garbage. But honestly, you can even see something positive in that, right? They're seeing, the value of the work enough to critique it and say, okay, here are ways to improve upon it. So I think it's just reframing it and trying to channel it into a positive. So definitely, even when it doesn't seem like it's a positive.
Oh yeah. I think during that point or during that part in the publication process, it doesn't seem so. It seems so frustrating. So disappointing. I made this paper. I don't want to look at it even, or start revising it again. But later on, you realize that, what? I think that if it weren't for those edits, those changes, the paper wouldn't have been as strong as it is now.
Exactly. Yeah. And the more journals that you submit to, right? So say, for instance, you get a rejection and then you decide to submit to another journal. Those reviewers might say the same thing. That's actually happened to me in the past where I didn't address, right, the previous comments. And then lo and behold, the next set of reviewers were like, have you thought about doing this? So.
Exactly. I mean, I feel that we should keep going and going and going because I myself am really benefiting from all sorts of insights and lessons learned during your journey. But before actually going to the very last part of our episode, how about you also share and advise or strategies that helped you during your prep phase for your PhD defense, the presentation, tackling the different questions, because I know that it's very stressful.
Oh yeah, definitely. That was the most stressful time of my life. I think I just had so much going on too in my personal life, which did not help. I would say for me, it was, figuring out when I worked best. Like I said earlier, I'm a morning person. So my mind is like more sharp in the morning. So I would try to do like the most, difficult tasks for my PhD or like working on my defense in the morning. And then I would give myself some breaks in between so that way I could enjoy, and not burn out with all the stress. But I would say that. So like that would be a technique. Also, practicing, right? I think that I had never practiced something so much in my life, right? But practice does make perfect. So the more confident you are, right, that you're practicing something, the more confidence you're going to have in yourself and your ability to execute, right, the presentation. So I would say that as well.
Definitely. Practice is very, very important, like you said. They always say practice, 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 three practice.
Oh yeah, if not more.
Exactly. Because
Yep.
it's really very important. It gives you confidence during the day of, it also makes us pinpoint our weak points and
Yes.
what do we need to work on more when it comes to simplifying the different ideas that we're trying to convey.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, right? Because it's something that we know best, right? Because we spent so many years working on it. But how do you convey that, right, to like a lay audience or like the general public, for instance, right? You need to like break down all the jargon, communicate clearly. So I think that that's the biggest challenge.
So true. Okay, so this brings us to the very final part, which is what message would you share with those that are considering achieving a doctorate degree in any discipline in general, and then in psychology in specific?
Yeah, I would say like, definitely pursue it. If it's something that you're passionate about, you want to do, go for it. Don't let any of the trials, knock you down. Just keep going, right? Keep your mind like on the goal and your eyes like straight forward and focused on that. I would say for psychology, psychology is so broad as a discipline. I would say that it's really important to know like what you want to specialize in, right? So for me, I'm a social and personality psychologist. So what specific area, right, do you want to focus on? And then also like, what is the particular, sub area within that subdiscipline? So there's so many different things. So having a very narrow, specific focus and knowing also who you want to work with, right? Reading their papers, understanding, the lab, that's so important, right? Knowing the environment that you're about to walk into, that's paramount. So making sure it's a good fit, I would say.
This actually brings up another question related to that. So you just stated researching the discipline that you're going to join and even the department. Let's say if you have a specific university in mind and a specific department in that university, researching that department, the PIs that are working in that department, right?
Yeah.
So how would you, as an applicant to a PhD in psychology program, construct your personal statement to be a winning personal statement?
Yeah. So I would say that like towards the end, this is what I did, what I've had other friends, and like other individuals that I've talked to have done this is that at the end, right, you have essentially like a paragraph or so where you're saying, this is my interest, right? And I would like to work with so-and-so, identifying the PI's names in that last part of the statement, and then explaining why, right? That program specifically is the one that you want to go to and how you think it's going to benefit you, right? In terms of getting a doctorate from that university. Mm-hmm. That's my recommendation, at least.
The last paragraph is really important.
Yeah.
And emphasizing who do you want to work with specifically.
Exactly. Because that person can advocate. It might be a risk, maybe, because you don't want to pigeonhole yourself, right, to working with like one person. Maybe somebody else is joining the faculty and you're like, oh, wow, I can see myself working with this person. Maybe you could rephrase it to say, oh, I'm interested in research along these lines, similar to the work of, insert professor's name. Yeah.
Because then you would enumerate a couple of professors and their different research interests. Unless, do you think it's possible to reach out to the professor before finalizing your statement to make sure that they have opening?
Yes, I think that's important. You want to show initiative, right? And say like, this is why I'm interested. Are you accepting students? And try to have a conversation if you can, right, with that PI. I feel like that's so important. You're going to get a sense of maybe like how they operate, what's their working style, right? Are your personalities going to like jive? Are they going to clash? I think it's important to have a conversation up front if you can.
Definitely, because it's like a marriage relationship.
It is. You don't want it to be an arranged marriage. Nothing against arranged marriages, but in grad school, you want to have, some understanding of the person prior to start.
Definitely. Yeah. Any last take-home messages that you want to share with prospective PhD applicants or even undergraduate students who are thinking of pursuing a doctorate degree, even a doctor of medicine, pharmacy, any doctorate degree? Any last take-home message?
I would just say go and chase your dreams. I never thought in a million years that I would even graduate college, let alone obtain my PhD. So it's just so important to stay focused, right? And know that it's possible. Know that you're capable and that you can make your dreams a reality.
Dr. Liz Lozano, it was an extreme pleasure having you with us.
Thank you.
Definitely, shared a lot of very important advice, insights, lessons learned. So thank you so much for being here today with us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. So excited to be here and to talk to you. So thank you.
Thank you so much.